What are the biggest pitfalls to avoid in freshman or sophomore year if you don't want to take a gap year? That's a question that someone just asked in my free pre-med school community. If you're interested in getting your questions answered, just like I'm about to do, click the link below in the description to join the community. Anyway, let's get into it. So this is a very common concern that students coming into pre-med have is, will I have to take a gap year? And if I don't want to, what do I have to do? So first, I'm going to talk about what you can try to do if you want to avoid taking a gap year. But then I'm going to talk about a little bit why taking a gap year might not be such a bad idea and what do I look for when recommending whether or not a student needs to take a gap year. So the first thing you need to set up to not take a gap year is making sure that you're going to have all your pre-med requirements done in time so that you could properly take the MCAT before May of your junior year. That is generally when you want to take the MCAT before, because you have to apply in June of your junior year. And it's not so easy to get all the classes done to be able to do that. As crazy as it sounds, how you set up your freshman year schedule can ultimately have a lasting impact on whether you're going to take a gap year or not. So, for example, you should be taking both an intro bio and general chemistry in your freshman year. So Gen Chem 1 freshman year in the fall, Gen Chem 2 in the spring. The reason this is so important is because you need to take those two classes in fall and spring so you could take Orgo 1 in the fall of sophomore year, Orgo 2 in the spring, and that way you have enough time to get biochem done in the beginning of your junior year. This is because a lot of schools require Orgo to be completed before biochem. If you're already behind because you haven't taken Gen Chem, can you do it over the summer, let's say after your freshman year? You can. I personally don't love when pre-med students take a lot of their core requirements over the summer because it's easier to do well in the summer classes if that's the only thing you have to focus on. So if you do it for one series, maybe it's just chem or just physics, it's not the end of the world. But if the med school admissions committee see all these prereqs that are taken by itself with no other hard classes, well, the concern there is, okay, they can get an A in the class when it's not with anything else, but what's going to happen when they have a fully loaded schedule like they will in med school? And so that's why it's so important to start planning this timeline out as early as possible. Okay, so setting up the timeline is very important. That's the first thing you need to do in regards to not having to take a gap year. The second thing you need to do is make sure you're actually doing well in your classes. I can't tell you the amount of times students will come to me with not the best GPA. Let's say it's a 3.3, 3.4, and they say, I'm going to apply straight through to medical school. And I have to tell them, hold on, let's think about this for a second. If you apply straight through to medical school, that means you have to apply in your junior year. If you apply in your junior year, that means your senior year grades, those 2 semesters, are not going on your application and will not be calculated as part of your overall GPA. And that means you're leaving a lot on the table and you're asking the admissions committees from medical school to give you a lot of grace when they're reviewing your app, because those admissions committee members, they're going to want to see if you don't have the best GPA, why are you rushing to apply? Do you even have all the other experiences, the clinical, the shadowing? Were you able to get the MCAT done in time and have a really good score? And if that's all the case and somehow you were able to do that, well, they want to see that you're able to get A's in these upper level sciences. And they may not have that opportunity if you're applying in junior year. And the only way that you can get those extra semesters to boost that GPA may be having senior year. And so my rule of thumb for students that I work with, unless they're really adamant against it, is I want to see you have at least a 3.7 science GPA, not cumulative, but science GPA, if we're going to work on you applying straight through. Now, do I help students apply straight through that have less than that? I do, because you guys are all adults. If you come to us and you want help and you say, I have to apply straight through, we're going to help put you in the best position. But as a professional advisor, my goal is to be honest with my advising. And I'm going to tell you that to put yourself in the best position, I'm looking for at least a 3.7 science GPA if you're going to apply straight through, because applying straight through these days is really, in a sense, rushing the process a bit. And so on top of that, you don't have the opportunity to get gap year experience. You have to make sure that you're studying for the MCAT earlier because you have to get everything done in time. So it is difficult. However, if you want to do it, it's not impossible. I say this as someone who did go straight through, but I had a 4.0 GPA and above a 90th percentile on the MCAT. And so I was able to also get the clinical research, shadowing, all that done in time because I was planning early on. It's not easy. And every year it gets harder and harder to get everything done and be a competitive applicant. And so what I'm here to tell you is if you're thinking about taking a gap year, there are a lot of benefits. One is that you're not rushing the process. 2, is that you have more time to boost your GPA because you have those senior year semesters, which a lot of times are upper level science classes, which look really good if you do well in. Also, that gap year, it's a nice year before going from undergrad right into med school. A lot of students will say, oh, I'm worried about losing steam. I'm not going to be able to pick it back up in medical school. This is not the case at all. First of all, if you're so concerned that you're going to lose such steam academically, then honestly, this might not be the field for you, because this is a very long road of studying. You're going to be studying a long time, both in medical school, even in residency. I'm about to go into fellowship soon, and I'm still studying for more boards and more boards. So it never ends. And so having that little break is nice. Also, it's a very quick year. So for example, in your senior year, you might have just taken the MCAT. Then in June, you submit the apps. Then that summer, you're starting to work on the secondaries. And then you may be starting a gap year position, whether that's scribing, research, maybe a consulting gig, maybe you do a little bit of traveling, whatever it is. And then you start interviewing. That takes a decent amount of time. You start hearing back from schools, and before you know it, you're already starting med school. So most students, the majority of students now, do take a gap year. I generally recommend it, but if you don't want to, you have that right. You could absolutely get accepted every year. There's a lot of students that get accepted without a gap year, but these are the things that you have to start thinking about. Having a good timeline set up and a strong GPA. And to get a strong GPA, this requires using evidence-based study techniques. So if you are interested in getting this type of help and advising, you want to make sure your timeline's set up properly, you want to make sure you're doing well in the MCAT and the admissions process, click the link below and you can schedule a call with either me and myself or someone from my team. We're happy to tell you about our Ultimate Advising Mentorship Program. You could also opt in for access to our free pre-med tracker and school community. And if you are enjoying this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.